The subcommittee will come to order. I'd like to welcome everyone here for our second fiscal year 2020 budget hearing for the Legislative Branch Appropriations Subcommittee. Apologize we're late getting started. We had a vote on the floor, but hopefully everyone will join me when they have an opportunity to run over here like I did. Today we have with us the Honorable Michael Stenger, Sergeant at Arms of the Senate, and Matthew Verderosso, Chief of the U.S. Capitol Police. I appreciate your willingness to appear before the subcommittee today, and I certainly look forward to your testimony. The vital services provided by both of your agencies enables members of Congress to do our jobs and maintain an open democratic process. We appreciate what you and your teams do every day to protect us, our staff, and the millions of people who visit our Capitol each year. Also, I'd like to thank you both for you taking the time to meet with me before this hearing and letting me know a little bit more about your agencies. The total budget request for the Sergeant at Arms is $214.6 million. This represents an increase of $3.8 million or 1.8% above the FY 2019 enacted level. This funding level includes an increase for the Senate IT Help Desk contract, continues the protection of our networks, and provides for the services that support the day-to-day operations of the Senate. The Capitol Police request for FY 2020 totals $463.3 million, an increase of $7 million or 1.5% above the FY 2019 enacted level. This increase supports an additional 57 sworn personnel to continue to meet the needs of the Capitol Police Board's 5-year plan to cover known vulnerabilities and mission expansion. It also covers expenses associated with supporting the Republican and Democratic National Conventions, which will be in 2020. I look forward to our discussion today, and learning more about the requests from your agencies. And when Senator Murphy gets here, we will certainly recognize him upon his arrival. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if you want to go ahead, we can start with you as giving our opening statement, the Honorable Michael Stenger.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, Ranking Member Murphy, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and present the Sergeant at Arms 2020 budget request. I ask that my formal testimony be submitted for the record. The budget request reflects a modest increase of 1.8% over the fiscal year 2019 enacted budget. We continue to remain good stewards of the funds entrusted to us by providing oversight and management, and most importantly, focusing our resources on the operational needs of the Senate. Safety and security of the senators, their staff, and visitors, both here and abroad, and ensuring the legislative process goes unimpeded remains our top priority. I can provide this support because of the talented leadership I have behind me. Jennifer Hemingway, my deputy, Dick Attridge, my chief of staff, my assistant sergeant at arms, Brian McGinty, John Jewell, Crystal Beal, and Mike Chandler. On my executive staff I have with me today, Terrence Lilly, my general counsel, Robin Gallant, my chief financial officer, and Katrina Sims, my executive assistant. Preparing for emergencies and protecting the senators and their staff remain the primary mission of my Security Emergency Preparedness Directorate. Through exercises and drills, we continue to train Senate staff on threats and how to react to them. Our request provides us with the funds necessary to continue with this mission. It will further allow us to connect the Joint Emergency Mass Notification System with the new digital signage throughout the Senate buildings. My Intelligence and Protective Service maintains collaborative partnerships with the United States Capitol Police and many law enforcement intelligence agencies. These partnerships have proven to enhance our situational awareness with the Senate community, particularly during significant events and activities at the Capitol and state office locations. Our budget request affords the necessary funding to plan for these events, such as the upcoming Republican and Democratic National Conventions and the planning for the fiscal year 2021 presidential inauguration. We recently created the Office of Member Outreach and Security Coordination to work closer with the Capitol Police to implement security initiatives and provide ongoing guidance to members and their staff when planning and attending events. We will continue developing this office to ensure the senators and their staff have the most current information on issues such as threat level, specific areas of concern, and local law enforcement contact information. Cybersecurity threats remain a significant risk for the Senate. In 2016, we developed a cybersecurity awareness program to provide real-time actionable information to users. We will continue developing and refining assessments for officers following industry and government's best practices to mitigate risk. We have collaborated with academia, including Virginia Tech, Harvard, Carnegie Mellon University, and intend to expand our partnership through expanded collaboration with Northern Virginia Community College, University of Maryland, George Mason, and George Washington University. Further, we plan to continue awareness sessions with the offices. We have consolidated all state office support, providing state offices one point of contact for assistance. The State Office Support Program provides staff training to the state offices on topics such as responding to an active shooter and stop the bleed. Our budget supports continuation of these efforts. Developing and implementing a hybrid cloud strategy remains another key goal. Such strategy will allow us to move appropriate applications to the cloud after analyzing data protections. We are recompeting the support contract for the IT help desk to provide the Senate community with more highly trained technicians and improved responsiveness. We are in partnership with the Secretary of the Senate on a multi-year project to modernize the financial management information system. The first 3 modules are scheduled for initial implementation this year, which will allow for the retirement of the legacy system. The number of day-to-day support operations ensures the Senate can conduct business in a safe environment. For example, mail security and postal handling serves a critical safety function for the Senate. Our chamber operations, recording studio, and media galleries support the ability for senators to communicate with their constituents and help ensure transparency in the legislative process. To conclude, the Sergeant at Arms proudly serves the Senate with an array of departments that supports the legislative process. Fiscal year 2020 budget request enables us to continue providing solid security and logistical support, fostering us to plan for requirements in the future years. We look forward to working closely with you and the committee staff, and thank you for your continued support. This concludes my opening remarks. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief?
Thank you and good afternoon, Chairman Hyde-Smith, Senator Murphy, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to present the department's fiscal year budget for 2020. Our collaboration with the subcommittee and the Capitol Police Board has been key in our success in achieving our mission. I greatly appreciate the support that you all have given the department and for your inherent understanding of our multifaceted mission to keep the Congress and the Capitol complex safe and secure. I'm joined here today by my Chief of Operations, Assistant Chief Stephen Sund, Chief Administrative Officer Richard Braddock, and my General Counsel, Gretchen DeMar, as well as members of my executive management team. I'm also joined here today by Inspector General Michael Bolton and USCP Fraternal Order of Police Chairman Gus Papathanasio. Our overall mission is clear: to maintain the level of protection necessary to balance access and security so that the Congress can fulfill its constitutional responsibilities. Over the past year, our officers have screened 11.2 million individuals at building entrances and interior checkpoints. We've managed an ever-increasing number of demonstrations, which are approved for specific outdoor demonstration areas. We have secured and supported 2 lying in state ceremonies and a lying in honor ceremony, and we managed responses to numerous instances of prohibited civil disobedience occurring across the Capitol complex. In addition, we investigated numerous credible threats against members of Congress. Last October, our hazardous devices team safely contained a pipe bomb at the Congressional Mail Facility, one of 16 that were sent to elected officials and public figures across the country. The suspect was linked to several of the devices by evidence obtained from the package sent to Capitol Hill. Our work contributed to the identification of a suspect, which assisted the FBI in apprehending him within days. As law enforcement officers, we do not know what we may face each day. We train and prepare so that we can respond to any threat because lives depend on us. Our daily reality is that the Capitol complex remains an attractive target to foreign and domestic terrorists. Each and every day, we assess all potential risks and adjust our strategies to address the various threats. The department continues to stay focused on ensuring that we stay current on the latest issues facing law enforcement, including new and emerging threats, and we're working to align these serious security realities with our strategic priorities within our available resources. Therefore, we have developed our fiscal 2020 budget request of $463.3 million, which is an increase of 1.5% over last year's enacted levels, with a focus on continuing to equip and prepare our workforce to be agile and responsive to the operations of Congress and to keep the Capitol complex safe and secure. Our request includes a base funding for 2,072 sworn and 442 civilian positions. The additional sworn personnel will be utilized to enhance the department's ability to detect, impede, and address persistent threats that continue to increase and evolve. We're also requesting one civilian position, additional civilian position for the Office of Inspector General to conduct additional work related to cyber infrastructure and financial audits. In addition, our request includes funding for protective travel, the hiring and training of new sworn personnel, the management systems and technologies upgrades, and required supplies and equipment. This funding will also address increases in operating costs due to the required protective services and travel needed to secure the 2020 National Republican and Democratic conventions, as well as support the pre-planning and preparation for the 2021 presidential inaugural ceremony. Chairman Hyde-Smith, the type of policing that our police officers engage in is not typical of most police departments. Our officers interact with thousands of people each day, and they do it in a highly visible environment. And they balance this public interaction with the need to be prepared at all times to respond to potential threats and other emergency situations. We understand that working for Congress requires both maintaining an impeccable work ethic and accountability. In this regard, I want to assure the subcommittee that my team and I will continue to work closely with you and your staffs to ensure that information about the department and its operations is provided in a timely and consistent manner. I'm honored to lead an organization that takes such pride in our mission and great responsibilities which we bear. Mission focus is key to our ability to be successful, to serve and protect, and to ensure that our employees go home safe every day. Again, thank you for your continued support of our department and the workforce as we carry out our important mission. And I thank you for the opportunity to discuss the department's 2020 fiscal year budget request. Pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Now we'll recognize Senator Murphy for any opening statements he may have.
I'm happy to continue with the witness testimony or with questions. Thank you very much.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you. Thank you both for your service and forward to working with you and the chairman and the ranking member on the budget.
Okay, I'll start with my first question for Mr. Stanger. In the Sergeant-at-Arms budget request, it states that the Cybersecurity Division is working to develop a 5-year strategic plan to bolster the Senate's cybersecurity posture and to modernize network infrastructure. How will that plan build on the investments that we already have and that we've already made, and when do you envision having that completed?
Chairman, we believe that the 5-year plan, actually, I think in 2016, we saw the need to develop and harden our systems and modernize our systems and make them more user compatible. So we've been moving forward. Since that time, we're up to 91% of the hires that we were authorized to do. So we're trying to do it. It's a difficult environment to hire in this area due to the technical expertise that we're looking for. It's very competitive. So the cost rises. I'm sure when more technical companies move here, it's probably even more difficult to hire and retain people. So we move forward. We recently worked with the Rules Committee to do a cyber awareness training program where everyone was required to do it. I believe that come 2020, when our budget's now, if we move forward in this budget, we'll be pretty much finished with letting the contracts go and implementing the systems and the security systems that we talked about doing a year and a half ago.
And you've also mentioned recently increased hiring with the Cybersecurity Division, and giving the high demand that you just described with the technical expertise that you're looking for, professional and competency with other agencies. Have we been able to hire the qualified staff we need for those initiatives as well?
Chairman, I think we have. We look at these. We look at each hiring individually. I mean, one of the things that we want to hire people that have the technical skills, the loyalty and the desire to work here, even sometimes at a reduced salary they can have. And the other thing that we're concerned about is, as we hire, is you always have to be concerned about hiring the right people, not only technical skills, but you always have to be looking at and being concerned about the insider threat. So you want to make sure you're hiring the right type of people here.
And we appreciate that concern, no doubt. Do we have any questions from anyone else? So I can.
For both of our witnesses?
Yes.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry that I was just coming from the vote, so I missed your prepared testimony, and so maybe I'm asking you to repeat some pieces of this. Chief Verderosa, you and I have had a number of conversations over the years about security for members off campus. I think I heard you finishing maybe some prepared testimony. We set up in this last budget a new allocation of money to be used to stand up additional capacity to cover member events off campus. Can you just give an update on to how that money is being spent?
Certainly. We have been employing that funding in a number of ways based on the number of protective details. In 18, we had a significant number of events. In 19, just bear with me for 1 second. We have since calendar year this year, we already have 47 events in fiscal year 19. So 47 events and 6 law enforcement coordinations. That's about the number, I believe, that we did last year. We already have 69 future events prepared. We've spent about 65% of the funding thus far of appropriated money for this particular National Capital Region. We're working very closely with Mr. Stenger's office to ensure that we get the information, and I think there's been a great increase in the number of events which we become aware of in terms of protection and coverage in this area. We look at protection from a global perspective, so it's not singularly putting DPD, dignitary protection agents, at an event. We look at the total assessment for the event, and we'll deploy those resources necessary, and they can differ based on the venue, the type of event, the number of members that are attending. Typically what happens is we'll have a perimeter secure, we'll have the assets available to respond to any type of situation, whether it's an individual, we'll have protective intelligence teams out. We also have uniformed presence as well as a plainclothes presence. If the venue is required based on if it's an outdoor event, those types of things, we can have our tactical team respond as well as do hazardous device sweeps and canine sweeps prior to the event. So I think we've partnered very closely with not only the Sergeant at Arms office, but also our local law enforcement partners. We recently hosted at COG, the Council of Governments Chiefs Committee. We gave a briefing on to the other chiefs in the area based on what our needs are, and we've solicited their assistance, and we've gained great assistance in the local areas in and around Washington, D.C. for those events which require us to not only deploy, but would require additional local response based on whether we know if there's any demonstration activity or any type of activity that would be handled at a non-protective way, such as local law enforcement action. So I think we're very appreciative of the funding that we've gained, and based on what we have on the hopper already in terms of future events, it's going to be very busy the rest of the fiscal year.
And Mr. Stenger, this obviously relies on the right information getting to Capitol Police, and there's a subset of activities that you know about that you may be involved in coordinating when there are big movements of members for official activities. But of course, there's a whole nother set of activities that are political in nature, in which you have big numbers of senators or House members in a particular place that may not involve immediate notification or the knowledge of the House Sergeant at Arms or Senate Sergeant at Arms. How, if at all, have you changed your protocols in making sure that all of that information gets to the Capitol Police and the burden is appropriately placed on everyone, including members' offices, to let the Capitol Police know when there are large gatherings of members off campus?
Yes, Senator, we started stood up an organization, created a section of from the Sergeant at Arms called the Member Outreach and Security Coordination Section, which sends out a message every week, every Monday, to the members and the staff, chief clerks, chief of staff, schedulers, asking for any information they would have as to any activities, events that the member may be involved in, or any concerns, or even if they don't have a big concern, we ask them to provide that information. We coordinate that with our situational awareness team, which scours the internet for many things, whether it's threats or activities that are taking place in conjunction with the Capitol Police. So we're getting it from, but you're correct, the information that we really seek is from the staff as to what's going on, and they should never be hesitant to provide us something. It's no burden on us. We've created this unit. We work very closely with the Capitol Police, so we encourage people anytime and that doesn't have to be in the state office. That can be right here in town. So we've had over 200 already so far. It's an 87% increase since we started sending out this notification and created this organization. So we just encourage people to continue to let us know.
Thank you for that, and the need is there, as evidenced by those numbers. And then, Mr. Stenger, again, you may have done this in your opening testimony, but can you just provide an update on the Senate working group that was convened to talk about the coverage for our personal devices? And I guess Senator Van Hollen and I have been in a couple briefings in the last few weeks that I think left all of us more concerned and more worried than we already were about the threats to our personal devices, and has left me more befuddled as to why we don't just simply include these devices under the umbrella of what is protected by the services that you offer. One of the options that I think was discussed at the working group level was to provide an opt-in ability for members and members' offices to receive services and advice from the Senate Sergeant at Arms. And so I guess my question would be, if that was the direction we were to pursue, do you have the capability to do that with current levels of support staff, or would you need additional capacities?
Yes, in that working group, we facilitated that group and had a number of members, as you're aware, that put in. One of the things I would give a little history on is that some years ago, people would hack and try and get your financial information for financial benefit. Now they hack for information. They try and get information, whether it's hacking or just picking up a piece of paper with information, because information about people and things has value. So you're right, it's continued to expand and will continue to expand, because it's not only that these groups target you, they'll target your family members if they can, to get the information. So the working group came up with 5 options, and the 5 options, each one requires more escalation as part as other groups be involved with its rules, statutes, appropriations, or the easiest one to do, which we've already started implementation, is status quo with enhancements, which means what we're doing is being much more proactive, going out to talk to the staff and the members and the folks up here about advisories, training, information sharing, and different things like that to make sure they're aware of the issues that are out there. We talk about, to some degree, you go back, there was an old adage about an educated consumer or user is our best customer, and that's probably true of today's environment. The second level that we would go to is what you just discussed, is where the Sergeant at Arms would take, you would go out and say, you have your personal cybersecurity company, that we would do an assessment on that as to whether they appear to be legitimate. That appears to be probably the next level up. That may require some changes to law or changes to appropriations. I couldn't say at this time until I saw how in-depth we would do that and what level we would take it to. But each one after that, you have the multilateral agreements where it would be one company so each one requires a little bit more interaction on our part. And I would imagine that as you take the step up, there'll be incremental increases budgetary wise. I think it brings in all the others that have to decide. Then we have to be any changes to statutes or legal issues.
I'll just make my case one more time for those that haven't heard it. I think we have a double standard today. I think that when there is a threat to our personal security that is serious enough for around-the-clock protection, we get it. Really, no questions asked. We have coverage here, and we have coverage in our private life if there is a round-the-clock serious threat to our personal security. We don't recognize that same standard when it comes to our cybersecurity. If there is a threat to our personal devices, we still tell members they have to deal with that on their own time, with their own budget. And so I simply think it's time to apply the same standard we do to personal physical security to cybersecurity, understanding that that may take changes in statute, changes in rules, or changes in appropriation. I just think for all of the information we've got about how under threat our personal devices are at home and in our pockets, we should square this circle as soon as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And thank you both again for your work, and thank you and your teams for your professional response to the pipe bomb threats last October. If I recall, one of the pipe bombs found its way into one of the mail sorting facilities in Capitol Heights, Maryland. I think it was addressed to Congresswoman Maxine Waters. So I know both of your teams had responsibility in different parts of that in responding to it. So thank you for that. Thank you. My two colleagues here have really asked many of the questions I had, which relate to cybersecurity. So let me just ask you, Mr. Stenger, and I know we're in an open setting, but I think everyone recognized the threat. Your team did. You hired more people. I understand your update on where you are on that hiring. What is your assessment right now of the threats, cyber attacks made against Senate offices? In other words, efforts on a daily basis for folks to try to hack in to the Senate systems, through members or through our staff. What is your assessment of that threat today?
Well, it continues to be a problem, and it's a threat. People are going, as I mentioned, people want information. They want information about you. They want information about other people. That has value. So we continue to recognize the threat that's out there. So we're looking at our systems, and we're dealing with the intelligence community, with the law enforcement community, with the Capitol Police, with the private sector.
But can you quantify that? I don't think it's classified. Just sort of talk about what you sense on a daily basis in terms of the efforts to hack into the Senate systems.
Well, it goes on. It'd be hard to quantify how many, but it's a fairly substantial amount. I mean, these are almost like robocalls to some degree. Somebody's not specifically going into, and it could be at individuals up to organized groups. They're not necessarily sitting there trying to do an individual phone hack or computer. It's almost like robocalling. They're just sending out. So these things go on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's difficult to come up with a quantification of the numbers, but it's a large amount.
How about foreign governmental threats, hacking efforts?
Well, it's kind of difficult for me to go into too much in an open environment, open hearing like this, but rest assured that information has value. So everybody recognizes that. And like I said, whether it's malicious actors that are individuals or organized groups or funded by someone else. So value is value. So that's what they want. So it's difficult for me to go into specifics here, but people want information.
I would just, share the sentiments expressed by Senator Murphy. It seems to me to be a vulnerability in the overall system when people could hack into some of the personal information devices. To the chief, I know you work on a regular basis to establish good relationships with local law enforcement. in states and around the country. How is that going? Do you feel that you're getting the kind of responsiveness that you need in terms of local law enforcement when you're trying to establish relationships? And do you try and work those relationships out before there's a specific threat?
We do, sir. We do. In the National Capital Region, it's very easy. Obviously, we meet regularly, particularly here in the district. I meet regularly with the assistant director in charge of the Washington Field Office of the FBI, with the United States Secret Service director, Mr. Ailes, and Chief Newsham of the D.C. City Metropolitan Police and the Park Police and all of our partners. And our dignitary protection agents travel throughout the country with the congressional leadership, and we also cover numerous other members when they're attached to CODELs or any other type of organized events. But we also do on a daily basis outreach and security coordination for member offices. We reach out, and part of that is we do an assessment of public events. We do an assessment of both open and closed source information, and we reach out to the local partners, whether it's a city police department, a sheriff's office, the state police, or even other federal agencies when we have events that are occurring. So we virtually have feelers all over the country every day. Just for instance, since calendar year 2019, we've done 158 law enforcement coordinations, and we did 51 other outreaches to congressional offices. But part of that is contacting the local police departments. I also attend national conventions, and I also meet with chiefs that come to Capitol Hill to whether they're visiting members of Congress or are here visiting the city on a law enforcement issue. So we work very, very cooperatively. I find that we get in virtually every instance complete cooperation whenever we have a tasking or a request. In terms of our investigation and enforcement actions, when we reach out to another jurisdiction because there's a credible threat against a member or a direction of interest case, which we may use local laws, we get tremendous response. They partner with us when we deploy our agents. They will conduct interviews for us. They'll do security checks of district and state offices as well as member residences with the credible threat. And then, of course, we work hand in hand with on the Joint Terrorism Task Forces. We have task force officers on a number of joint task forces, and we partner with the Bureau on all of these threat investigations. And in terms of even with the U.S. Attorney's offices throughout the country, we are partnered. We're embedded, and I couldn't be happier with the level of cooperation that we get.
Thank you. I have one. So the Silver Spring incident, the individual in Silver Spring, Maryland, was that a case that was on your radar screen for a while? Which law enforcement agency was first?
We worked with the Bureau on that.
Okay.
Chief Verderosa, your budget request this year includes funding for the final year in the agency's 5-year plan to mitigate certain concerns and meet expanded mission requirements such as the House garages and enhanced screening in the House and Senate chambers galleries. The plan would add an additional 57 sworn personnel for pre-screening, dignitary protection, and intelligent needs in the FY 2020 budget. What is the time frame for having the mission requirements of the 5-year plan fully covered?
We should be able to complete the multi-year plan in 2020 based on the funding request and the salary request, assuming that our recruiting and our hiring process continues at the pace that it's at. And we look at security from the global perspective in terms of keeping the threat as far away as we can. So working with the board to close those vulnerabilities was very important. Also to provide a visible physical deterrent at doors in the office buildings was a top priority. And we've been able to accomplish significant progress with that. And with the continued hiring and training in 19, as well as the future in 20, we should be able to complete that mission, I believe, on time, on budget, and on schedule.
Great. While the requested increase for 2020 is relatively small compared to the requested increases in previous years, I worry that we will have additional cost in future years to sustain the size of the force, especially after adding another 57 sworn officers. Please tell us what we might expect in the terms of cost to maintain a force this size in the years to come.
Sure. Based on the outlook in terms of our projections, we were fortunate this year because of the timing of our training classes that we were able to absorb the hiring costs within our 19 and schedule training to a point where we didn't need to ask for even half-year funding for those individuals. We will be making a request in future years to support that salary level. And I don't have the exact dollar figure now, but I can certainly submit it to the staff and get you that number.
Okay, and again, noting the growth in recent years, have you been able to keep pace with recruitment while continuing to meet the standards we expect in our USCP officers?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Recruiting is it's a phenomenon in this area because there's so many law enforcement agencies that are vying for really good top flight candidates. We partner with USA Jobs, and we have both an in-person and an electronic process to attract candidates this year. And it is becoming increasingly difficult to find candidates that meet the standards. And the one thing I would note is that we don't lower our standards. We wait until we find the right people. And with that, we are able to go out, and we started a new program which takes officers who are in the field who meet certain criteria, have well-established records, who represent the department well, to go out and partner with our background investigation team to recruit actively. We've been fortunate over the last few years. We haven't had to send our recruiters out. We target recruit military and educational institutions, but we haven't had to do as much physical recruiting, going out and going to the job fairs as we've done in years previous. We are starting up this program, and we're going to actively seek more candidates as we go forward now. It was time to make that adjustment.
Okay, and Chief Ferderosa, in the report you provided to the committee outlining the feasibility of implementing a mandatory physical fitness program, you highlighted certain legal, logistical, and cost implications. What do you see as the biggest hurdle to implementing a mandatory fitness requirement?
There certainly are logistical, legal, and other essential function questions that have to be resolved before we can implement a physical fitness program per se. We're taking the approach with wellness in terms of we're looking at it from a greater perspective than just physical fitness. One of the areas that we're going to focus on, in partnership with the Office of Employee Assistance and partnership with the House Wellness Center, we are looking at trying to relieve our officers of concerns and issues which affect their ability to be here at work, to be productive employees. And that goes into not only physical health, but also mental health, mindfulness, the wellness program, financial health. And we're looking at it from sort of a whole person perspective, because if you have a focused, more efficient person who does not have to worry about daycare, does not have to worry about a health issue for a family member or any type of other distraction, then we have someone who's here who's focused, who has clarity of thought, and who is able to respond. We also looked at, any medical issues or any type of issues that are prevalent in our workforce. The difficult part of implementing a required program is providing people with time and effort off post to prepare. For us, it's we work mission shorthanded based on FTE. We work a tremendous amount of overtime, and we work all over the country, and we have long hours. Our employees are here more with us than they are with their families in a lot of cases. And what we try to do is focus and prioritize the time that they have on the clock to the really core prioritized mission. One of the things that we would need to do in order to implement a mandatory program is provide them opportunities to be physically fit, which is more time off post, and which is more time I have to backfill with overtime. I'd rather use those personnel for mission focus, and then try to leverage all of the programs that we have to make them health. We have a tremendous level of participation in our gyms. We have 3 gyms, one at the Academy, 2 here on the Hill. We have, incentives in place and a lot of programs. We have a fitness coordinator that helps design programs for individuals. We're going to bring on a nutritionist to help people maintain a healthy lifestyle. And it's all part of the overall picture to make people more effective here at work. And I think we have a very good plan. I can certainly work with the staff to get you more details on our approach to this. But I'm very encouraged with some of the work that the House side is doing in terms of their wellness center, some of the things that we're working with our diversity office in terms of peer support and a mentoring program, which all goes into the overall wellness of the individual. So I think we're in good shape. Again, if I saw an issue, if I saw officers going to medical, needing medical attention, hospitals, and all that kind of thing, we would take a different approach. We've also surveyed a number of other agencies and looked at the pitfalls and looked at the priorities that they have and how they implemented programs. And it really runs the gambit from a voluntary to mandatory with consequences, and which can be challenged in court, that kind of thing. So it's really it's a larger program than just the physical aspect of it. I do appreciate the question, and it's something that we look at on a continuing basis.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Mr. Steger, you're asking for an additional $3.4 million to improve the current IT help desk contract, which supports senators' offices and committees with their IT needs. Will you explain to us the need for the increase and what improvements the Senate community can expect from this expenditure?
Yeah, Chairman, I think back in 2013, there was a large reduction in the staffing of the help desk. I think it was 35%. Since that time, they've lost another almost 30% of technical folks there, and their technical expertise has dropped since then. The program expires, or the contract expires in October of 19. So we have to, I guess it's been about a year and a half we've been looking at for a replacement. One of the benefits that we're hoping to get out of is to draw up more stricter guidelines for what's acceptable as far as expertise and going out and automating some of the responses to the community. I think customer service is very important. We use customer satisfaction very important. We've dropped in some of the levels of the technical expertise because of the drawdown. So we need to build that up. Technology continues to change on a daily basis, so it's always competing and trying making sure that you have the most technically astute people. I think the other benefit that you have on a help desk that we have if we staff it correctly is you have a core of subject matter experts that can advise your systems administrators and assist them in a better fashion than maybe what's been taking place because of the continuing competition for those assets.
And how does the IT help desk interact with or supplement the system administrators in senators' personal offices?
they're the ones that would provide the information. You have a system, you may have a system administrator that's not sure about something or doesn't have that technical expertise, they're able to pick up the help desk. The help desk handled last year 11,000 calls and 6,600 installations. So they're out there to assist your staff, the system administrators. In some of those areas, they may not have the expertise. That's why we're trying to build this core up.
Sounds very helpful. Any more questions?
Just a couple more. Chief Rosa, I believe my first year in the Senate, there was a tragic incident where a young woman from Connecticut drove her car through a number of jurisdictions, ending up here on the Capitol grounds. And in surveying what had gone right and gone wrong, one of the challenges that was pointed out was the fact that she did, in a very short period of time, cross several law enforcement jurisdictions, going from Secret Service to Metropolitan Police to Capitol Police. And it is very challenging to convey information when something is developing that quickly. Without disclosing any protocols that should remain private, have there been changes put in place since that time, and is that an ongoing discussion to make sure that we are maximizing the speed with which information transfers when individuals are rushing from one jurisdiction to another?
Sure.
Maybe a threat to the campus.
Oh, absolutely. We have made great improvements in communicating with our partner agencies. One of the things that we do is, for the Metropolitan Police and for other police departments within the city, we do have the ability to communicate over our radio system directly. We have the Metropolitan Police radio systems in our vehicles, so we can talk car to car. I can answer a call to their dispatcher. So we get information immediately. We monitor their radios in our command center, and we know what they're seeing. We also have the ability to talk on a direct line to the core police departments, communication centers. So we have a phone that picks up in the Secret Service JOC and the FBI's Washington Field Office Dispatch Center. And that phone also picks up for the Metropolitan Police and the United States Park Police. So when we have a multi-jurisdiction event, we no longer have to go through this series of notifying a dispatcher to call a supervisor. Their watch commander talks directly to our watch commander. The information is put out immediately over our radio system, and we know what's coming. Not perfect, obviously, because communication still has to flow, but I think we've made tremendous strides. Our dispatchers have the ability to communicate basically with any police department over the radio in the National Capital Region over a unified radio channel, and we have relationships and other police departments' radio frequencies on every officer's portable radio to some extent. Park Police, Metropolitan Police, and the Secret Service. Not everybody has, but some of us have the Secret Service as well. So I think the communication has improved greatly. And we monitor and coordinate responses when other agencies have events. So say there's an event with the Secret Service down at one of their locations, whether it's the White House or any other event where they have jurisdiction. If it's a critical incident, we're going to send a commander or an intelligence agent to their command post, and they're going to get direct information. We'll know what's going on. We'll know who the subject is, and we can run those individuals through our databases to ensure that if this threat to either the White House or one of the monuments is truly a threat, we're going to know if we have a threat against us based on this individual's personal identifiers.
And then lastly, just to follow up on Senator Highsmith's question about the survey you did on physical fitness, I think you raised an interesting question about whether there's a responsibility to provide time on the clock or not. When you surveyed other law enforcement agencies that did have some physical fitness requirement, did they all provide on-the-clock time for physical fitness, or did some of them expect, or would we find examples of agencies in which their expectation was that physical fitness could happen off the clock?
Right. My recollection is that it ran the gambit from some did, some didn't. Certainly remedial, if someone didn't pass a test, would be done on a programmatic way, and that you have to meet certain benchmarks for improvement. And I believe that the remediation part at a minimum would be on the clock. But I can follow up with you and get you more specifics.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Sure.
Madam Chair.
This concludes the Legislative Branch Appropriations Subcommittee hearing regarding fiscal year 2020 funding for the Senate Sergeant at Arms and the U.S. Capitol Police. I want to thank both of you for testifying today, and I also want to thank you for the tour of the when we had the State of the Union address. You've both been so accessible to me, and I really appreciate that. You've been very kind and very, very accommodating, so I just commend you both for that. The hearing record will remain open for 7 days, allowing members to submit statements and/or questions for the record, which should be sent to the subcommittee by close of business on Wednesday, April the 10th, 2019. The next hearing of the subcommittee will be held on Wednesday, April the 10th at 3:00 p.m. in Dirksen 124, when we will hear testimony from the Congressional Budget Office and the Government Accountability Office regarding their fiscal year 2020 budget request. Until then, the committee stands adjourned.